Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Conscious Psychologist. I'm Dr. Indhushree Rajan, your host. And it is my pleasure to have Mr. Jim Poole, the CEO of NuCalm, with me today. We're going to be talking about mindful health. And specifically, we're going to be learning about this revolutionary product called NuCalm and talking about its implications for psychological and mental wellness. So welcome, Jim. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Indhushree. Great to see you.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your own personal journey and kind of how it led you to NuCalm. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good question to start with. My own personal journey. Well, it started in 1968. I shared a womb with an identical twin brother for 9 months, and then was 4 minutes more mature than he was.
Uh-huh.
Amazing the power of 240 seconds. And,
I
well,
bet you held that over him for like what, your entire lives.
still do. Let's get the stopwatch, brother. Both parents were psychologists, which I think has some structural connective tissue to how I got to where I am. But and then moved a lot as a kid and pursued psychology for a while, and then pursued medicine, and then pursued business. And how I got to NuCalm is one of those circuitous routes where the intersection is something you don't expect, and when it happens, you kind of stop, reflect, and upon reflection now, 15 years later, it's a marvel to me. I would call it a universal intervention, how this all came to be. But essentially, the spirit of this and the agreement that I shook hands with Dr. Holloway with, the inventor of NuCalm, was simple. He said, Jim, I will keep you healthy if you make me wealthy. And that's an agreement that we established 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an amazing journey. I feel so blessed and honored and privileged to lead this enterprise and to have purpose and a mission to help humanity, which drives you every day. I mean, you're a very hardworking therapist, and there's a lot you want to accomplish. And a lot of times in therapy, it's one-to-one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to see the magnitude of that implication. Now, you do know that the person that I help also has a cascading help across their family and their network. But for us, it's been a one-to-many mass shift in consciousness for humanity. So it's an amazing opportunity, and I love it. I love what I do, and I love what we do.
Well, it's wonderful. And, especially in the world we live in now, we have so many conflicts globally. There's so many things that are happening in different communities. I always love to hear about and learn about, projects and products and, organizations that are really looking to heal, helping to heal, people, helping people to find healing and helping people to really become the best version of themselves. I mean, that's really what I'm passionate about myself and my work. So that's fantastic, and I'm really excited that we get to really take a deeper dive and really understand what NuCalm is and how it can help people on their journey wherever they are. So, with that, please do tell us, how does NuCalm work, and what do most users experience with the different NuCalm tracks?
Again, great question with a lot of layers to it. Let's start with how the operating system of the human brain works, because that'll give us at least the foundation to understand how we may be managing human brainwave function. So the brain and our behavioral pattern are mimicked based on frequency, so a waveform. And the human brain operates in a frequency range of 41 hertz. There are 5 categories of brainwave function, and many of us have heard of some of them. Delta is deep sleep, alpha is creativity, gamma is high intensity. So of these 5 categories, delta, theta, and alpha are in the sleep architecture. So they're a slower waveform, 0.5 hertz all the way up to 12 hertz.
Mm-hmm.
Then beta is the broadest range and the highest functioning. So 13 to 15 hertz is alert, but not that energized. 15 to 20 hertz, a faster frequency, is the learning zone. 20 to 25 hertz is stress, fear, worry, agitation, impatience. 25 to 30 is a higher level of stress, fear, worry, agitation, impatience. 30 to 38 hertz is pure primal fight or flight and survival. And then 39 to 41 hertz is this interesting zone that's called gamma and is actually commensurate with high intensity mistake-free focus, which is a really cool nuance of the brain. But so many people don't understand frequency, and that's okay. It's a waveform. There's an amplitude and there's a speed, and it's measured in hertz. So understanding how the brain works, and more importantly, understanding what's happening when your brain is oscillating at a certain frequency was the genesis of NuCalm. So Dr. Holloway was a neuroscientist, a naturopath, a quantum physicist. He had a clinical practice in Texas serving the folks coming out of the theater of war and folks who were coming out of emotional, psychological, physical abuse patterns. So a lot of them had trauma. A lot of them had complex trauma, often comorbid with addiction. Again, we don't know what we don't know. We seem to be quick to judge, but addiction is not the manifestation of someone being a coward or weak. Addiction is a manifestation of your brain knowing more about how to help you than you do. So
that's so interesting. You know, say more about that, because I know that we oftentimes, you know, when I talk to clients about how to mitigate different behavior patterns and how to create changes, especially when we're talking about something like addiction, we deal with equilibrium and homeostasis, right? So I'm assuming that that's kind of where you're leading, but please do say more about that.
The traumatized brain is in a constant state of fear. Traumatized brain's in a constant state of hypervigilance, never takes a break. But your brain knows, hey, Jim, you know what? If we go down to the bar and have a drink, I can get out of this psychic pain and this torture right now, and we'll deal with our problems tomorrow.
Right.
So that's the brain's understanding from a history, from a schema, saying, hey, alcohol is amazingly predictable at getting me out of this current state of psychic pain. That's the genesis of the addictive pattern. So it's really the brain and the neuronal circuitry of the brain's ability to manage and manipulate you to get you to do what it wants it to do, because it knows how to solve a problem. It doesn't have the thought saying, hey, you know, if we do this, maybe we're going to create negative consequences of addiction. It doesn't care. It wants to serve its need in the near term. So the genesis of NuCalm was designed to solve the problem of high intensity, hypervigilant fear associated with the change in physiology and neurochemistry of the traumatized brain. Irrefutable evidence that we know that the traumatized brain changes. Just because you can't see it externally doesn't mean on a PET scan you can't see diminished blood flow to key areas.
Absolutely. No, trauma definitely changes the brain. And what's interesting about what you just said is that once we get down from the high of, once we are sober again, if we drink, or once we get down from the high, if we use, I think the brain also brings us back. The body strives for equilibrium and homeostasis. So there you are left with your problem still. Right. It's a very temporary fix. And the thing that's also interesting in terms of the context of healing is that we're not allowed to revisit that initial high, because the brain figures it out, and it's kind of like, ooh, equilibrium. So it's not going to allow us to get that perceived benefit again in the same way.
Correct.
Yeah.
So why did Blake Holloway, this brilliant, compassionate human being, spend 19 years trying to figure this out? As a neuroscientist, he knew the outcome he wanted. He said, Jim, if I can manage the brain and move it to an oscillatory pattern, if I can hold the brain in theta, which is a certain frequency range of 4 hertz to 7 hertz, theta brainwave function is synonymous with deep REM lucid dream state. And it's a space in our behavior where our cells clean their toxins and the mitochondria is restored. It is the restorative healing aspect of sleep. So the end game was, let me figure out how to manage the human brain and put you into this state using mathematics and physics, not work, not asking you to override the complexity of your traumatized brain and the circuitry of survival. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just going to manipulate that. So when you think about how do we manage the human brain, there are 2 ways to trick the human brain and to pace the brainwave function. One is a visual aspect and the other is auditory. So Blake figured out an auditory method, and essentially using your ears as a carrier, we present your brain with a signal, much like a NASCAR pace car. So we start, for example, with rescue, our key therapy, and we start at 15 hertz. We don't care how fast your brain is going. We don't care how stressed you are. We begin the process at 15 hertz, and within 8 minutes, we slowly and naturally guide your brainwave to theta, and then we hold you there. So NuCalm uses your ears as a carrier to present your brain with a signal in a software. This software is 1 to 2 gigabytes per track, 1 to 2 gigabytes of information. There's mathematics, there's physics, there's algorithms, pitch, there's frequency, there's binaural signal processing, there's isochronic waveform. There's this whole amalgamation of very complex science that lies underneath music.
That's incredible.
You as a listener, me as a listener, hear this beautiful composed symphony of sound. But underneath, we're saying, hey, you can enjoy the music all you want. We have work to do, and we're going to begin that process. So Blake was an amazing gift to humanity. Speak of him in the past tense because he passed away on December 20th of 2020. But he literally spent his adult life figuring out a method to help humanity down-regulate the stress response without drugs, without narcotics, without work, simply using physics to manage and bring your brain to the outcome he knew would help you achieve homeostasis and healing.
That is fantastic. And, you know, you mentioned without drugs, and that's an important piece, you know, I see with clients that come in. A lot of times clients who come to do work with me, they're on multiple medications that are addressing depression, anxiety, PTSD, insomnia, other organic issues. And I want to preface this question by saying that if you are listening or watching today and you do have a psychiatric issue or a disorder and you're on medication already, please do consult with your doctor, you know, if you're under a doctor's care before you make any changes to your routine. But what I would love to know from you, Jim, is what does the research on NuCalm say about when people who do have psychiatric issues listen? What seems to happen? What have you been able to track through the research? Are people able to get off of medication for various issues? And because that would be that to me, that's one of the biggest things that I also hear about from clients is I don't want to be on medication. There's a fear of medication. What is that? What is this pill going to do to my brain? Is it addictive? You know, I get all of these different questions around medication. So
there should be fear around medication. The body is a closed loop ecosystem. The brain does not want to be invaded by anything. It protects you. Any action to your brain has a reaction. Anything you do to your brain will have a side effect. It's a compensatory mechanism of the brain's survival. Your body and your brain don't want to be invaded by anything ever, anytime. So let's start with how the brain is wired. We'll do 30 seconds of evolutionary neuropsychobiology. There are two areas of the brain that are really important for us to understand, and many of us aren't taught this, but it's really pivotal that we understand how does our brain work? Because when we understand how our brain works, we can figure out for ourselves how we want to solve these problems. There are two areas of the brain that are important for us to pay attention to. One is called the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is the stress response and the rest response, the sympathetic tone and the parasympathetic tone. Now, some of us have heard of that. And what's the purpose of that? Well, that aspect of our brain is governed by the amygdala. Many of us have heard of the amygdala or the primal brain or the reptile brain or the lizard brain. Not very conscious, is it? No, something that's called the lizard brain probably isn't very conscious. This area of our brain manages a lot of our involuntary functions like our breath and our heart rate, but it also governs fear, stress, anxiety, depression, and worry. The amygdala is the epicenter of the autonomic nervous system that oversees fear, stress, anxiety, depression, and worry, and also manages fight, flight, or freeze. This part of our brain is speculated began the circuitry millions and millions of years ago. Some say 40 billion years ago. So the circuitry of this part of our brain began. Now think about how evolved and resilient and how much learning your brain does in a day, give it 40 million years. If you don't think this is a perfected system of excellence, you're mistaken, and you need to have a little bit more humility of the complexity of your brain. So the amygdala is an almond-shaped piece that lies in your midbrain, okay?
Yeah.
It has a lot of power. This part of our brain, our forehead, is our prefrontal and frontal cortex. This part of our brain separates us from primates. This part of our brain is our personality, our character, our patience, our presence, our executive functioning, our logic, our emotional control. So the game on daily existence of being a human is to manage resource allocation of the currency of the brain. Now, the currency of the human brain is not money, it's not time, it's not attention. The currency of the human brain is oxygen-rich red blood. Oxygen is the key healing element of humanity.
Yeah.
So, how does this all work? The central nervous system has one primary function: self-preservation and survival. Nothing else matters. We can go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it doesn't matter if you're not alive.
Yeah.
So, at its disposal, your central nervous system has your five senses, your intuition. And as soon as it feels fear or thinks of something fearful, it activates the almond, the amygdala. And the amygdala, in its 40 million years of circuitry, knows how to pull all the resources to mobilize your body to protect you from the threat, whether I'm thinking about a threat or it's a real threat. And it takes all the oxygen-rich red blood from my forehead and activates it through the amygdala and the HPA axis in our body: cortisol, catecholamines, adrenaline. So that's the landscape of how this works. Giving me, as a patient who's suffering from anxiety, a central nervous system suppressant to address an autonomic nervous system problem, the equation doesn't equal. That drug is not going to the source of my problem. It is managing the symptom of my problem. Masking and suppressing my anxiety, but it's not solving my problem. NuCalm does is it wasn't designed to resolve psychiatric issues. What NuCalm does, and it does it better than any technology on earth, it slows down the human stress response. It disengages the power of the amygdala. It takes the resources away from the amygdala and redistributes oxygen-rich red blood to your forehead. And it does this simply by taking your brainwave. Think about when you're stressed, your brain's going fast. When you're really stressed and you're distracted and you're sweating, your brain frequency is going too fast. But the strength of the amygdala and the circuitry of that part of our brain, you can't talk yourself out of it. We all know when we're feeling anxious, our mind, our amygdala says, hey, you're anxious? Think about more things that are anxious, Jim. Let's get in that feel.
Right.
You can talk yourself out of it. So the blood leaves here and you're literally in this cascade. It's like you're being flushed down the toilet and there's nothing you can do. NuCalm comes in and says, hey, we don't care. We don't care about anything. We don't care about demographic, geographic, disease state. We simply know that if we can effectively and predictably and safely hold your brainwave in the state for you personally that allows you to be liberated from the stress, liberated from the fear, and held in this zone that we know allows you to heal, restore, and recover, we win. So we have seen thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of cases where people have been able to get into a state of homeostasis. They themselves titrate or get out of their medication merry-go-round on their own. We all know, as a human being, I know my body better than any doctor or medical practitioner could ever know. And I know that if I'm taking something, at some point, my body normalizes it and I have to take a higher dose. And then there's more consequences, more side effects. You do what you think you need to do, but just as you said, consult your doctor. But with NuCalm, we're going to the source of how we know the body naturally can take care of itself. If we liberate the chaos of our monkey mind, if we can liberate ourselves from that fear, the body wins. And it's not a miracle, Indhushree. It's not magic. NuCalm takes time, but it is safe. It is predictable. It is patented. It is clinically proven. It did used to be an FDA Class B medical device. It has all bells and whistles of an effective solution, and it's designed for you to take care of you.
Yep. What I love about what you said, well, you said so much, and I really kind of want to highlight a couple of different things. A lot of times, and I love how you put that, certainly when we are intelligent design. So when we're cycling in a certain emotion, the brain is like, oh, okay, she likes to be anxious, so let's create more receptor sites and give her the capacity to be more anxious, right? And so we have, the more we stay in a certain emotional cycle, the more capacity we have to perpetuate our stuckness in that cycle. And so the way that when I talk to my clients, what I talk about is survival mode, right? Because, the urgent always tends to supplant the important or the desired in life. I think that whether it's kids or a job or different kinds of stressors in life that we all have to contend with, because that's the nature of life, we tend to get drawn out of a regulated rhythm of living. And so we end up, kind of focusing all of our energy on bills, groceries, kids, job, whatever. And so it sounds to me like what you're saying is there's a brain reset that happens with NuCalm, which allows us to perhaps navigate the things that we have to do, but be able to regulate and function in a way where we are not running from thing to thing to thing, but rather we're able to kind of have a different perspective and create some balance in our lives, which
That's exactly true. And, when we simplify things, we kind of have a better understanding. We as a human species, all 8 billion plus of us on this earth today, are managed by an almond. That's truth. There's 40 million years of neuronal circuitry in the survival mechanism of our midbrain. There's only 4 million years of neuronal circuitry in our prefrontal cortex. So the challenge is really built around mindfulness.
Yeah.
There's two challenges that I see, though. In our existence, in the 15 years of traversing the earth, evaluating this, looking at this, observing this, and helping people of all walks of life, there are two interesting blind spots of the human brain. We seem to be wholly incapable of understanding intangibles. If I can't see it, smell it, touch it, feel it, taste it, is it real? Well, stress, we intuitively know isn't good. We intuitively know when we're stressed, we're not functioning well, but we don't understand it.
Right.
That's just the way that life is. So this aspect is a real challenge for us. One of the solutions is called mindfulness, but again, it's intangible.
Right.
Now, 3,500 years ago in Asia, China, and India, they began the practice of understanding, hey, I need to balance my autonomic nervous system. I need to get rest and digest and not always be in sympathetic overload. Well, we don't seem to understand mindfulness. It's not tangible. Is it real? Is it soft? Is it ooey gooey? Is it shoo? Whatever. No. Guess what it is? Break it down to the elemental value of mindfulness. It's about oxygenation. Your brain is oxygenated in a proper distribution, and oxygen is here.
Right.
We all win. So if I choose, yes.
Oh, go ahead.
So if I choose mindfulness, I have a few choices: meditation, yoga, tai chi, deep breathing exercises. Those are some of the choices I have in mindfulness. Well, personally, Indhushree, I'm not good at any of those. My brain is not wired for peace and quiet and down-regulating the monkey mind. No, I have, a type A driven, ambitious, impatient, overly aggressive brain. I meditated for 20 years as a martial artist. I'm pretty convinced I was the worst meditator in the history of mankind. I was terrible at it. Every time I shut my eyes, my problems just swirled around me. I was having panic attacks. NuCalm understands the principle of oxygenation. We use technology to deliver a predictable outcome. So when we simplify, how do we take care of ourselves? It is through oxygen. The modality that you use to get there is up to you. But I know something that you do as well. The traumatized brain is wholly incapable of current mindful practices in its current state of dysregulation.
Well, and that's actually that leads to something else that I'm really wanting to ask too. I mean, one of the things that I think, and I do a lot of mindfulness work with clients. I do a lot of trauma work. So certainly, before you get anywhere near deeper issues, when you work with someone who's gone through serious trauma, there's a lot of containment work. There's a lot of work to getting people to be able to contain and regulate their emotions and just simply function from day to day. And so I do a lot of guided meditation and breathing and visualization. And I think the two most important components to meditation, really, to me, meditation can happen in a moment. It doesn't have to happen on a hill in an ashram for 6 hours, which I think a lot of people have different ideas of what meditation is. To me, it's about the breathing and the detachment, right? Because it's oxygenating the bloodstream and detaching from whatever emotional swirl we happen to be in, or whatever distracted state the mind is in. So the challenge I find in doing this work with trauma survivors is in grounding them, being able to get continuity so that we achieve that state of, oh, I'm functioning better sooner, right? Because until we get to that function, oh, I'm able to function, I'm not breaking down every day, that, until we get to that containment state, we can't address the trauma. We cannot really drop deeper into whatever might be going on with the person who's come in for treatment. So what I've seen with NuCalm, I've used it myself, and I've had wonderful experience in terms of better sleep and not having depression, not having anxiety, being able to emotionally regulate myself. And I'm exposed to this so much in my work. And I see this with my clients too, where it's just so helpful in terms of containment, in terms of that. I think that reset, when I've talked to practitioners about NuCalm, what tends to come up is, oh, wait a minute, if this is going to help people not be symptomatic, then will they still need therapy? Will they still need coaching? My experience in that regard has been it enhances the work that we do with clients. I think it makes us, it helps with that symptomatic state so much that it really allows clients to feel better sooner, because that's the other challenge, is that people come into therapy and it's like, okay, how long until I feel better? You've been in therapy, I've been in therapy, it's a very individual thing and it's a process. It takes time. Therapy is also not a miracle, as you said, it takes time, right? But it's very intangible. It's a process. And when you have to enter into a new relationship, a new process, while you're holding all of this trauma, that in and of itself can be stressful. So it's interesting to me. I kind of feel like, NuCalm's a great adjuvant or companion to therapeutic work and coaching work. I mean, has that been your experience too?
That's true. NuCalm literally is the perfect solution for complex psychiatric issues, for neuroses, psychosis. It doesn't matter. It is the perfect solution, and it is a facilitator. It is not the be all end all. But if you can't downregulate and slow down the stress response, you never have access to permeate the survival brain. It is the perfect down regulator. So to give some examples, in 2014, we began working with the Comprehensive Cancer Wellness Program under the guidance of Dr. Janet Ranicky, MD, PhD, and one of the world's leading psychoneuroimmunologists. She'll be the first to tell you, for years, Jim, I've been trying to help engage the cancer patient, because a lot of cancer is an emotional manifestation of unresolved conflict and trauma. And that's what the cancer cells feed off of, that stress. And I can't do it because I can't slow down the primal survival instinct and the body's need to protect even from itself. NuCalm is the great facilitator. It literally comes in, it shows no discrimination, it shows no hypothesis, no ego. It simply uses math and physics to say, hey, you have cancer. Chances are when you were diagnosed with cancer, the fear, the stress, the confusion, the overwhelm, the expectation, the anger, all of that has consumed you to a space where you're constantly in sympathetic overload, you're not sleeping, and that stress response is accelerating the disease state and ending your life. That's a problem. We come to the rescue and say, hey, we're not here to cure cancer. That's not what we do. Your body is capable of curing cancer if we can slow down the chaos of the stress and the fear and the anxiety and the poor sleep. So literally every month we work with the Comprehensive Cancer Wellness Program. We've helped thousands of people with stage 4 cancer who've been given that certificate to say, go home and die in peace and dignity. We've done all we can. They're still alive because the body is a miracle if you can facilitate the body's natural process by bringing it to homeostasis. So NuCalm Rescue is our core product. It is the product that's been around for 15 years. It is a product that's used across the Department of Defense, the veteran community, addiction, pilots, professional athletes, you name it. It used to be a $6,000 FDA Class 3 medical device. And the whole concept of that product is to, within 8 minutes, simply pace your brain down to 4 hertz and allow your body the opportunity to heal. So each day, once or twice a day, it's an immersive experience. You find a comfortable, safe place. You lay down. You put an eye mask on and a nice pair of headphones. You select a rescue journey on the NuCalm mobile app, and you lay down. The first couple minutes, nothing happens. We're preparing you. We call it the departure lounge. We're preparing you. We're going to take you on a nice journey. But we can't just consume your brain. Your brain won't allow that. So you lie there, and then all of a sudden, your mind begins to drift. You're detaching. Your mind wanders. We're not controlling anything anymore. And that lack of control of that detachment allows the body to get to where it needs to get to. We slow down the adrenaline. Your body starts to fall into that bed. And within 8 minutes, you are now breathing at the diaphragmatic volume of one breath every 10 seconds, 6 breaths a minute. So if you had a parallel path and said, hey, in meditation, the outcome here, the end game is oxygenation. In NuCalm, the outcome is oxygenation. Well, with technology, we have a predictable outcome that we know with great specificity and accuracy exactly where we're taking you. 8 minutes, we're taking you to that spot. NuCalm is not the healer. The body is going to heal and get into homeostasis and oxygenate. So that's our core product. To give you an example of how powerful physics can be, today, there'll be 15 to 20,000 surgical procedures done with no general anesthesia and people listening to rescue in an operation with headphones and an eye mask on.
Wow, that's incredible.
2 million surgical procedures.
Incredible.
Placing general anesthesia. That is the power of physics and math and what we do.
That's
now, with
fantastic.
the fun industry, and you've seen this, 5 years ago, we were a single product, $6,000 FDA Class 3 medical device. Today, we're 6 products that manage all 5 categories of brainwave in a mobile app for as low as 50 cents a day.
Fantastic.
That's our contribution to humanity. For years, we were serving an exclusive group, military, police, fire, VA, professional athletes, pilots, doctors, and celebrities. Great. They need help, but we weren't helping enough. So we spent 6 years successfully transitioning from a Class 3 medical device to a mobile app. But along the way, because we had Blake in our corner, there was nothing we couldn't do. Imagine the confidence of working with one of the most brilliant minds to walk this earth. So I said, Blake, if we can take the traumatized brain and put it to 4 hertz in 8 minutes with great predictability every time, can we put you to sleep? Yeah. Can we move you to focus at 15 to 20 hertz? Yeah. Gamma at 40 hertz? Yeah. So it took us 9 years to invent deep sleep, 7 years to invent flow state, 6 years to invent ignite and focus. And on one day, November 15th, 2021, one day, our company's 34 years old. We went from 2 products to 5 products on one day.
I remember that day.
It's like, how did we do this? And then in June of 2022, we launched the sixth and final product. We completed, at that point, 32 years of scientific discovery, patents, clinical proof, our research done at Harvard, at NASA, you name it, we did it. We now have the capability to give some human being, through a mobile app, through a mobile device, the control for you to determine what mental state you want to have without external stimulation.
That is phenomenal. And I think, I'm so I mean, I didn't know. I mean, actually, I'm learning. I'm learning right along with everybody else. I had no idea about that they're using NuCalm, in place of anesthesia for surgeries. That's remarkable. I mean, I've had clients who've been using NuCalm now for over a year, who have, gotten off of sleep medication, who've gotten off of antidepressants, who've gotten off of anti-anxiety medication. And, like I said before, I'm a psychologist, I'm a professional, so I'm not going to make any kind of a statement that does not include, the caution that anybody viewing should be consulting with their doctors, and should be, if you are feeling like you're better, if let's say that you do use NuCalm and you feel like you are getting better, titrate and consult with your doctor and really, really look at doing that properly. But I've been noticing it in my practice. I've been seeing it. One of the biggest gifts that NuCalm gave one of my clients was the ability to come to terms with her life and die with dignity. I'd done end of life transition work with her for over a year, and she had metastatic cancer that had gone to pretty much all organs. And it was a miracle that she lived for as long as she lived. And she swore by NuCalm. She listened to NuCalm. She could not sleep without NuCalm. She listened to NuCalm Rescue, and, every day, multiple times a day. And the gift that it gave her was the ability to downregulate to a point where she could really come to terms with her life, and she could really, detach from this life plane and really start to move forward towards accepting and dying with dignity, which, that was a huge gift. And I've seen so many wonderful things that I've noticed with my clients, many of my clients who use NuCalm as well, the progress that they've made. So
it's incredible. It's hard for us because we're pioneering, and I was not familiar with what it meant to be a pioneer 15 years ago when I took over the company. Pioneering has one substantive challenge, and that is the brain demands a comparison. No one's ever going to really understand what we do. I've done 300 to 400 scientific lectures to the world's leading doctors all over the world. Nobody understands what we do. Blake Holloway's advances are so profound, maybe 100 to 200 years from now, people will start to begin to understand how he did what he did. We have 52 medical advisors on our advisory board, the best academicians, research scientists, and doctors in the world. Collectively, they haven't figured out what he did. And the challenge is, if, hey, this is what this is, your brain becomes paralyzed because there's no comparison. So then we have to find a comparison. So our goal in the last couple of years has not been, hey, we're one of the world's top pioneering neuroscientist companies. Great. We're really social psychologists. Our goal in the last 5 years is, how do we make this so easy? I use the microwave as a parallel. The microwave was invented by a Raytheon physicist in 1946, but did not become a household item until 1986, 40-year trajectory. Today, if you asked 100 people in America how a microwave works, 95% won't know. How does it work? I don't know. What's it do? It conveniently heats up my food. Well, I don't need you to know how NuCalm works.
Right.
You're not an applied neuropsychobiologist. You're not an advanced neuroscientist. You don't need to know how it works. But what I want you to know is, it makes me feel better when I'm having a tough day. It helps me sleep without drugs. It allows me to focus when I need to focus. That's the goal, and that's what we're working on. I think it's also important for the listeners to understand this. Our brain is the same. My brain is mapped the same way your brain is mapped. You have an amygdala, I have an amygdala. You have an HPA axis, I have an HPA axis. We become victims of our own self-absorbed isolation because we think our problems are our own. And there's truth to that. complexity of your problems and the people in your life create a specific problem set for you. However, the stress response, when identified by your brain, is exactly identical for you as it is to me.
Well, and this is a critical piece because what I find, in the work that I do, I address, I call them life narratives. I think that, in large part, you're absolutely right. Obviously, that, the way that we're wired, the way that we're created, our survival biology, the impetus, that we have towards, patterns in how we live and all of that. I think, there are so many similarities between how we're, in terms of how we're wired, how we're designed. But I think that we get into the space of, when I've gone through so many different kinds of experiences, why does this thing always keep happening to me? There must be something wrong with me. We get into these places of reinforcing negative narratives about who we are. Oh, I must be cursed because I've gone through X, Y, and Z. Or, oh, I've had to struggle with all of these symptoms for so many years. Therefore, it must be something that, I guess, oh, well, it just is what it is. I just have to deal with that. I mean, I've been in that place myself. So I think what and sometimes I think initially what's difficult in therapy work is to get people to stay and to seed in and to open up to this process beyond their fears, their doubts, that narrative that keeps replaying and replaying. Why is this going to work for me? Oh, why is this going to be any different? But so in terms of, in that context, what would you say to people who are listening? I mean, why is this going to be different?
Number one, it's amazing the resiliency of the human brain and how we normalize dysfunction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
We
absolutely.
can normalize the sickest aspect of humanity, and it becomes our central nervous system's familiarity.
Yes. And we always gravitate towards the familiar. That's what we do, even if we don't want it, even if we don't like it. Yeah.
And it's because the circuitry of the brain, how the central nervous system is governed, is fight or flight and survival and self-preservation are number one. And I need familiarity and security. I need an anchor, because if I have an anchor and familiarity, my brain doesn't have to work really hard. And your brain is always looking for shortcuts. Mm-hmm. So we normalize dysfunction. When you think about therapy, or you think about going on a healing journey, and you think about not being satisfied with your current state, the NuCalm combination with therapy is brilliant. We, in our contribution at NuCalm and our science, is to simply say, hey, we're going to slow you down. We're going to take you out of the chaotic, survival, overprotective, hypervigilant, fearful brain state. And we're going to put you in a state of healing. We're going to allow the body to oxygenate. And we're simply going to put the brakes on all the chaos. When we're there, and there's cumulative benefits to it every day, we're simply disengaging the power of the amygdala. We're disengaging the power of the reptile brain. But you still need guidance and support and help to create new neuronal coherence. Just putting you in a state of relaxation does not put you on the end game of the healing path. It's simply a piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. So NuCalm comes in and says, hey, we don't care if you've tried a million different things and they didn't work. That's not our place. Mm-hmm. What we know is that for the last 34 years, we've built the perfect solution to solve mental state management through taking your brain and putting you in different states, from deep sleep to healing to creativity to focus to high intensity. Your body and your brain will respond with great predictability and safely each time you use it. So this is like forced meditation or predictable meditation on steroids. I often, when I'm lecturing, I tell people, I say, listen, 15 years of using this product every day, I have the luxury of thinking like a monk and acting like a capitalist. That's my life. And people are like, wow, I want that. Mm-hmm. Yes, you do. And everybody should get there. It took time and it takes time. So let us come in and say, hey, you're in trauma, you're in neuroses, you're in psychoses, you're in pain, you're in psychic pain, you're in survival mode, whatever that stress response is. The chances of you being able to figure it out on your own are limited just because of the circuitry of our brain. It doesn't make you weak. Your
Mm-hmm.
brain has more structure than you ever know. And when you study the brain, you'll gain the humility to be like, wow, the complexity of this organ is incredible. So you start with saying, hey, let's relax you. And then let's go to therapy and
Mm-hmm.
begin the healing aspect of taking care of you. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we're trying to accomplish with that combination. Do I run across people who are stuck, who are normalized and think, wow, I'm literally unfixable? Of
Mm-hmm.
course. And when I run across that pattern, I don't engage in trying to convince.
Mm-hmm.
My heart goes
Right.
out to them. I can see in their soul, I want to believe you, Mr. Poole. I
Yeah.
just burned so many times by things that don't work that my survival mechanism doesn't allow me to believe you. And I
Yeah.
said, hey, it's not my place. I said, I can see the fear in your eyes, but
Mm-hmm.
you can see and feel the confidence that I have
Mm-hmm.
because I know something that you don't. And that is math and physics simply do math and physics.
Right.
Your brain is wired the same way the human brain is wired. So we are going to have an impact on you. I can't tell you how quickly the healing response happens.
Mm-hmm.
Completely up to you, your epigenetics, your nutrition, the complexity of the trauma. There's so many variables. But I
Yeah.
do this. This technology is safe, predictable, and was designed to take care of the problems that are affecting you today. So
Mm-hmm.
come on board, try it out. The fact that we've made it accessible, affordable, and easy to use, and as affordable as $15 a month,
Mm-hmm.
there's no obligation. Try it.
No, I think that's fantastic, and it's absolutely right too. Right? I mean, I think that's true of anything in life. Is meaningful change comes from. I tell my clients all the time, meaningful change comes from honesty, self awareness, commitment, and consistency. And we have to be ready to change. And I think that this is an incredible tool in the sense that it takes so much of the uncertain out of the equation, right? And it also gives us this promise of a reset, which will help us to have a kind of a more balanced field of function to move from, to be able to finally address those things that we've wanted to change for the longest time, or that we've wanted to let go of for the longest time. But you're right. I mean, I think people ultimately change when they're ready to change, and we can't impact that other than, really making them aware of what's out there. And it's such a wonderful, I feel like, I mean, I've been so excited the more and more I learn about NuCalm and what all, you guys are doing in the world. I knew that I wanted to have you on today, and just really wanted to have you talk to this incredible technology and what it's doing for people. Yeah.
One of the ways to explain how this works, because the words fail to articulate the complexity of what we do.
Mhm.
And when I started working with monks 9 years ago, they said, Mr. Poole, one of the biggest challenges you're going to have as a pioneer of this technology is that there's nothing in the human vernacular to describe what you do.
Mhm.
It's going to be impossible. So I'm going to try, though. Say you're having a bad day and the day just gets worse, and you have that Murphy's Law where whatever could go happen, bad
Mhm.
happens. And you do feel that way. Wow, nothing I do today is going to work. And it just goes all day. And it affects your microbiome, it affects your appetite, it affects your cortisol. You're just agitated, you're impatient. And then you sleep well.
Yeah.
Okay. And you wake up the next day and you reflect upon the day that preceded it, and it doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah.
You slept on it. Well, in sleep, what have you done? You've levitated in theta and you've oxygenated. When you go and do rescue at 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon, you're having a bad day, you have addictive issues, you have trauma issues, you've got normal day function issues, whatever. And you go and you do NuCalm for 30 minutes, you lay there, eye mask, headphone, and you just kind of bake in this theta healing zone. When you get up, you essentially have slept on it.
Yeah.
So all the things that were bothering you literally roll off your shoulder.
Mhm.
That's what we're doing. So the
Mhm.
cumulative benefit of creating a habit of taking care of yourself is really important. And I think it's really important for all of us to understand a couple of things. One, we are all in this together. Our brain is the
Right.
same mapped operating system as everybody else's brain. We all
Mhm.
oscillate in 41 hertz. We all have an amygdala. We all have a prefrontal cortex. Our stress is different, but our response is identical. That's really important that we understand that, because then I don't feel so alone. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Secondarily, there are ways to take care of yourself. In today's culture, especially in America, where it's go, 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 get my to-do list done, most people will not make the time, energy, effort, have the persistence, discipline, and understanding to build a meditation practice or to do yoga or Tai Chi or breathing all the time. I find it fascinating, and I know you see this too.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing how easy it is for humans to come up with excuses not to take care of themselves.
Yep.
So
Very
the
true.
goal is make this easy, predictable, and safe, and simply do this and make it part of your pattern. Stress never takes a holiday. If you look
Nope.
at your calendar and say, hey, August 7th to the 14th, stress is going to Spain on vacation.
If only.
No, it's not. So
Yeah.
every day this becomes a cumulative benefit of me simply saying, hey, it's time for me to take care of me. I will find time in the day to do it. And every day that I do it, I take the amygdala and that reptile part of my brain and I put it at the kids' table
Mm-hmm.
where it always belonged. But our brain physiology and the circuitry of our brain has not evolved with the pace of our culture and the current living situation. Our
Mm-hmm.
evolution of our brain isn't fast enough to keep up with the advances in technology.
Mm-hmm.
This technology allows you the opportunity to unplug, which is an irony I really appreciate. And there are more elements to it, but the key system, the key practice, daily plan for anybody on this earth, it doesn't matter if you're a high performing professional athlete, a pilot, work for the Air Force, a Special Force, Navy SEAL, a teacher, a doc, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Rescue during the day, deep sleep at night. Deep sleep is the most complicated physics we ever created. Took us 9 years. Took us 9 years because we needed this to be simple. We don't need you to have an eye mask. We don't need you to have a headphone. With a speaker in your bedroom, you play deep sleep.
Mm-hmm.
That combination takes our typical pattern of high stress, poor sleep, high stress, poor sleep, high stress, poor sleep, and reverses it to good stress management, great sleep, good stress management, great sleep.
Mm-hmm.
People don't understand the incompatibility of stress and sleep. People say, hey, I don't sleep well. Well, I know unless you have obstructive sleep apnea, the only reason you're not sleeping well is you're not managing stress well. That's the
Yeah.
cause and effect.
Well, and the thing is, and you know, I do a lot of work with cultural trauma. I also do a lot of work with different kinds of communities, you know, impoverished communities, communities that are you could categorize as PTSD, you know, communities that experience PTSD, where there's, you know, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of, you know, trauma, you know, in perpetuity, you know, whether it's in the home or it's in the community, and it's disproportionate to different communities, you know. So culturally, you know, it's remarkable what you've done. I am grateful that NuCalm has made it accessible, that you've worked to make your products accessible to people who are struggling and suffering, and in there, because this is the world they live in, right? I mean, you know, think about the wars that are going on in the world today, all of the different kinds of things that are going on at a global level or that are going on at a community level, families that are struggling to make it. I mean, it's like, yeah, it'd be nice to have a holiday from stress, but I'm a single parent and I have 3 kids and I need to make it work, right? Or I don't have time to sleep sometimes because I have to help my kid with homework, and I have to, or my kid has special needs, right? So it's so powerful, to me, that you've kind of equalized, you've brought this technology and made it accessible to so many different people of so many different walks of life, and that's just wonderful. We have one question here, for you. Is it safe and effective? Is NuCalm safe and effective for children with ADHD who might struggle with impulsivity and emotional regulation?
Absolutely. The impact of being able to down-regulate the stress response and to put you in greater emotional control has an incredible impact. Dr. Holloway, for all his gifts, all his intellect, all of his curiosity, horsepower, and compassion, had Asperger's. We're very familiar with the autism, ADHD, ADD, Asperger's spectrum. There's been a proliferation of people afflicted with all of these, and a lot of them is derived from a deficiency in GABA, the body's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, which used to be in our food supply in abundance, Today is not, because of the toxicity of the preservatives and the neurotoxins, the excitatory neurotransmitters, the glutamates. So, NuCalm Rescue for ADHD. You'll notice the constant distraction. You'll notice the constant movement. You'll notice the inability to stay focused. It's a high frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Every day that we do rescue, we're training the brain. It's like a tuning fork. We allow the brain to get into a place where you're training it to actually get into these zones. Even more importantly, on the NuCalm app, there's a track and a journey called Focus. With just headphones on, we entrain the brain to 15 to 20 hertz.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a frequency associated with learning, consolidating information, encoding new information, and it's 18.4 hertz specifically. So ADHD, ADD, autism, Asperger's doesn't matter. You put the headphones on, we take your brain to 18.4 hertz, you become laser focused.
Mm-hmm.
We just did a whole video series from the University of Denver men's soccer team. We've been working with them for 4 years. And not surprisingly, half the players suffer from ADHD and issues with their studying. And you'll see on the videos that, hey, I get my homework done in 1/10 of the time it used to take me. I'm not distracted. I'm not thinking of other things. I put the headphone on and I focus. So absolutely, this will have an amazing impact on the entire spectrum. And what we've noticed on the autism and Asperger side is the parents suffer secondary PTSD.
Right.
A constant state of vigilance, or in a constant state of they can't relax because they're so concerned about their child. The whole milieu of the family dynamic changes so significantly. I call it addition by subtraction. When you take stress out of the equation, everything is better.
Mm-hmm.
And our role and our gift to humanity is taking stress out of the equation without drugs, safely, predictably, and now affordably and accessible.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And again, I work with children as well. And oftentimes, sometimes I'll get exhausted parents that come in and they are convinced that their kid needs medication. And, we see it oftentimes it takes some time to assess and really suss out what the problem is, because if we have an overstressed household where, the parents are running around and trying to figure out how to make things work, and kids are not really being able to be kids, for example, we can get some hyperactivity that's not necessarily ADHD, or we can get some acting out that's not necessarily ADHD, but we have these parents that are just kind of like, they've gotten to the stress point of, I need to give my kids something, because this can't continue. So there's that end of the spectrum. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where it's very clearly ADHD. And then we have parents that are, and rightfully so, concerned about, okay, my kid's growing, my kid's brain's developing. I don't want to give my kid medication. So what is that going to do? Right. And it's a very difficult decision to make. So this is such welcome and wonderful, news, that NuCalm can help in such a big way, even with children. Yeah.
NuCalm is a miracle. It's magic. We owe a debt of gratitude to Dr. Holloway. I don't know a lot of people who would spend 19 years trying to figure this out. His humility and his ability to learn as he went through trial and error and more failures and successes is unbelievable to me. Mm-hmm. The fact that the human brain is incapable of managing its mental state without external stimulation before NuCalm is mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. Today, you literally, if you want to do an experiment, you could put coffee, espresso, Red Bull, Monster Energy, alcohol, recreational drugs, sleeping tablets, everything on one part of the table, and put the NuCalm mobile app on the other side.
Yeah.
We have figured out a way to allow humans to manage their mental state using physics by simply down-regulating or up-regulating, like a dial, your brain frequency, and you choose the outcome. You don't need to know that 18.4 hertz is a specific frequency range of focus. You just press focus.
Yeah.
Put a headphone on. We do the work. So it's an amazing gift. It's been an amazing journey for us. I mean, the reward is every day, hearing all the amazing things we're doing for people. And in theory, it's simple. We're getting rid of stress. But in practice, it's amazing. And in building the technology, 34 years and $45 million later, that's what we've done.
Well, Jim Poole, Thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm so excited, that we got to get all this great information today. For anybody who's listening or watching, if this is content that you've enjoyed, please like and subscribe. Please tune in to the Conscious Psychologist for more interviews, for inspiring material, for all things psychology and wellness. So it's been a pleasure to be with you today. And I'm so glad that I get to call you my friend too. So bonus.
Bonus time. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, industry. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.